Because of why I search the deep through endless nights, no time to sleep. The call inside I can't deny. I'll find the light because of why.
Hey everyone, so let's talk about a place that pretty much defines paradise in our minds, the Virgin Islands. When I say that name, this is probably what pops into your head, right? You're thinking white sand, that unbelievable turquoise water, a nice breeze. It's the perfect Caribbean postcard. And you're not wrong. But what if I told you that behind this one picture of paradise, there are actually 3 totally different worlds? Yeah, because the Virgin Islands isn't just one place. It's an archipelago that's been sliced into 3 distinct groups: the U.S. Virgin Islands, the British Virgin Islands, and the one a lot of people forget, the Spanish Virgin Islands. They're literally next-door neighbors, but they operate in completely different ways. So I had to find out, what is the actual difference between them? Okay, to really get to the bottom of this, we have to start with the biggest question of all: who's in charge? The answer is buried in centuries of colonial history, and it's created 3 very different ways of life when it comes to government, citizenship, and even their core identity. This chart right here, it tells a fascinating story. You can see the British connection is super clear in the BVI, with the British monarch as the head of state. But then look at the USVI, and this is a great piece of trivia. It was actually the Danish West Indies until the US bought the islands back in 1917. And the Spanish Virgin Islands? Well, their tie to the U.S. comes through Puerto Rico. So right off the bat, you've got 3 totally different histories, leading to 2 of them being U.S. territories, but one of them still answering to the crown. And that term, Unincorporated Territory, is so important to understand. It's this really unique political status that applies to places like the USVI and Puerto Rico. What it means is, yeah, the residents are U.S. citizens, but they don't get all the same constitutional rights as someone on the mainland. For instance, they can't vote for president. And that one distinction has a massive domino effect on everything from their laws to their economy. And, these different political setups have built completely different economic engines. When you start to follow the money, you see just how deep the divide really is, especially when you compare the BVI and the USVI. So you've got 2 totally different playbooks. On one hand, you have the BVI, which has created this powerhouse economy based on 2 things: being a global hub for offshore finance and catering to really high-end exclusive tourism. Then you look at the USVI, and its economy is completely woven into the United States. It runs on American tourists, American investment, and federal support. So why is the BVI such a financial magnet? Well, it's what people often call a tax haven. There's no personal income tax, no capital gains tax, and they have really strict privacy laws, so it's hard to see who owns what. This combo has made it the go-to place for hundreds of thousands of international companies to register, making finance a huge part of their economy. But the USVI has its own secret weapon to compete. To lure in American investment, businesses there can get an incredible 90% reduction on their corporate federal income tax. It's a completely different game plan, one that uses its connection to the U.S. as its main advantage. And you can literally see this economic difference in the kind of tourism they attract. The BVI is famous as a sailor's paradise, right? It's all about private yachts and quiet, secluded coves. Meanwhile, the USVI is a major stop for enormous cruise ships, bringing in thousands of people at a time for short visits. It's the perfect visual for their 2 very different approaches. So, okay, politics, economics, this isn't just theory. All of this stuff has very real, practical effects on anyone who actually wants to go, visit, and hop between these beautiful islands. Now first, here's one thing that makes life a little easier. Even though the BVI is a British territory, all 3 island groups use the US dollar, so that part's simple. But don't let that fool you. Getting from one to the other isn't always so straightforward. And you gotta love this. Here's a fun little quirk that just perfectly sums up the mixed-up history. Both the BVI and the USVI drive on the left, just like in Britain. But since the USVI imports most of its cars from the US, you end up in this bizarre situation where you're driving on the left side of the road from the left side of the car. It definitely takes a minute to get used to. And this is where things can get tricky.
Even though these islands are just a stone's throw from each other, going from the USVI to the BVI is an international trip. You absolutely need your passport. You have to go through customs and immigration when you arrive and when you come back. You even have to make sure your charter boat is allowed to make the crossing. It takes real planning.
On the other hand, hopping over to the Spanish Virgin Islands is a completely different story. Since the USVI and Puerto Rico are both U.S. territories, it's basically a domestic trip. It's like going from New York to New Jersey. No passport, no customs, just a quick and easy boat ride. So when you look at the politics, the money, and the simple logistics of just getting around, it becomes crystal clear. We're not talking about one paradise here. We're talking about three, and each one has its own distinct personality, its own vibe. Let's put it all together. You've got the British Virgin Islands, exclusive, quiet, and all about sailing with an economy fueled by global finance. Then you have the U.S. Virgin Islands, bustling, Americanized, and built around big resorts and cruise ships. And finally, the Spanish Virgin Islands, which have a much more rustic, local Puerto Rican feel. It's quieter, more about nature, and a super easy domestic trip that feels like a world away. So, you see, they might share the same beautiful Caribbean Sea, but they really are three unique worlds packed into one tiny corner of the map. The choice isn't just about finding the best beach, it's about deciding which kind of world you want to step into. So I've got to ask, which version of paradise would you choose? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, especially if you've been to any of them. And hey, if this helped you see the Caribbean in a new light, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives. Thanks for watching and keep exploring.